everyone, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to discuss about Spring MVC framework. There will be two parts of this video. In today's video, I'll be discussing about the basic details, how Spring MVC is coming into picture and why it came up. And also I'll be showing you the XML based configuration using Spring MVC framework, and we'll be creating one web application and show it to you. And in the next part of the video or the second video, I'll be telling you how you can map the XML configuration into Java configuration, and using Spring MVC framework, you can create using Java configuration one web application project. So let's go. So before we start learning Spring MVC, first we need to know that why this MVC architecture or framework is coming into picture. So what happens before is, suppose you are the user and you have requested for a particular web page in app or in through browser. Okay, so according to the page that you are requested for, or according to the URL that you have hit, it will be going to that particular servlet or JSP, which will process your request and send you the response in HTML. Okay, now the thing is that it can be either servlet or JSP previously. So why so? Because you can write Java code inside a JSP file. At the same time, you can write HTML code inside servlet. Something like this. See here, this is a servlet, but inside servlet, using this out.println, we have written the whole JSP or HTML body inside a servlet. Similar way, we can write Java code inside a servlet. See, this is a JSP, doc type, HTML, HTML head and everything. This is a JSP. But using scriptlet, we have written Java code inside JSP. So using this approach, when a UI developer is trying to test the app or a website, or some backend developer is trying to test his changes in some Java file, they won't be able to do it separately. Backend developer has to include the JSP files or HTML files, or the UI developer has to include the Java code, but they cannot do it independently. That's where the clash comes and the problem comes into picture, because this is where that typical problem will come, that they won't be able to test their things independently in a particular project. So that is where MVC is coming into picture. MVC, Model View Controller. So that the presentation layer and the business logic layer can be done separately, or we can separate it. So that when I am saying presentation, it means the UI layer logic. So that UI layer logic and business layer logic, it means Java layer logic, can be separated out, and UI and Java developer can work it independently. Okay. So MVC, Model View Controller, how it is helping in this case? Suppose you have to change some UI code later stage, or you want to change the whole UI technology altogether in your project. Then using this way, you are coding this way, that when you are putting the Java code inside your JSP, or your JSP or HTML code inside your Java code, it will be a huge pain. Okay, and also as I have already told you that the testing of UI and business developer will always be clashing. But if you are making the code such a way that you are not putting the Java code inside your servlet, or vice versa, means you are not putting the Java code inside your JSP, or you are not putting the HTML or JSP codes inside your Java code, then it will be really helpful for them to work independently. So that is why model view controller, this architecture comes into picture, where model means the data that you need to pass on. Okay, view means the UI, where you can see, you can open a browser and you can see the data, or you can do things with a particular app or website. Okay, model view controller, which is controlling all the request and response and processing it and giving it to you. Okay, this is the MVC architecture, but this or developer nowadays using Spring MVC architecture because that is backed by, or that has a support with Spring IOC or dependency injection as well. So using Spring MVC, you can use the Spring IOC container as well as you can use the Spring dependency injection framework. Okay, so how the Spring MVC is working, let us understand that first. We know that using Spring MVC, you can develop a web application. But let us understand how it works. Suppose you are the user. You have gone to an app or through a website, you have hit for a page, for a web page actually, and request for some data. Okay, so now how the flow works. First thing is it will be coming to a front controller. When I'm saying front controller, it is nothing but a dispatcher servlet. Okay, so if we compare these two, so we can see here, see, your request was directly coming to a servlet, right? Servlet is nothing but Java file only, where you will be putting like do get, do post, these kind of method, and where you will be processing the request, or you will be routing like after this servlet which file it should go for further processing of the request. So similarly here also in Spring MVC framework, the first thing which will be coming into picture is front controller. So dispatcher servlet will be the one which will be getting your request first. Then on getting the request, it will straightforward send your request towards handler mapper. What does handler mapper does? You can think of handler mapper as a file which will check the URL of your request and then tell front controller or dispatcher servlet that to which controller the front controller should send that request, or which controller or data generator will be able to process your request. So this part of it, it means front controller has sent your request to handler mapper. Then handler mapper, on checking the URL part of your request, it will tell front controller that which controller, dispatcher servlet or front controller should forward your request, so that that controller will further process it. Now it might possible that you want to create your login or registration. You first try to register to a particular website, so it can be a create user. Okay, or suppose you want to just check your profile after login, then it can be a view user. So now let's suppose that you are a first timer at a particular website or app, so you are trying to register it. So it will, at that time it will be coming as /create user in the URL. So that is why when front controller tells handler mapper will be telling front controller that as the URL is this create user and this controller has that particular endpoint or API. So that is why front controller should forward that request to this controller instead of this. You can consider it as controller 1 and this as controller 2. So suppose front controller is sending or forwarding your request to controller 1. Okay. So now controller 1, this is the controller in like in our model view controller. This is that controller which is coming into picture. Now this controller might call some other Java file, which might call to a DB, or which can call to a third party like external API, okay, to get some data or to process your data and return you that. Okay, so all the things are happening here. That is why right now in Spring we have like DAO file, service file, all those files are coming into picture after this controller. So controller does all those processes. Now after controller gets the data by communicating with DAO file, service file towards database or some external API, it got the data. Okay, now it will be sending it to the front controller or dispatcher servlet. Then that dispatcher servlet will call the view resolver along with a particular name. Okay, what name? This will be the name of the view or the UI file that you need to show it to the user. Okay, so that suppose you have a hello.jsp. So that hello name front controller will be sending to view resolver. Who is view resolver now? View resolver will be that particular file which on getting the view name from front controller or your dispatcher servlet, it will create the path of your UI or view. So exactly where your view exists by appending some suffix and prefix to it. So when I am saying that it will be adding the suffix and prefix to it, means suppose you have your JSP or HTML file inside web.inf folder. Okay, so it will be like web.inf / your file name, then prefix will be .jsp or .html, whichever file you have. So this way it will be creating the whole path and it will be returning that whole path towards front controller. So front controller now know the address of the UI where the data it got from controller need to be processed and need to be shown after appending it into a UI or HTML or JSP file, whichever UI technology you are using currently. So now after getting the data from controller and knowing the whole address of view or UI, it will be sending the data to that particular view. And then that view will render your data or that particular data which has been returned by your controller. It will be rendering it into a HTML. Okay, and then it will be sending that particular rendered HTML or JSP file to your front controller or dispatcher servlet. Then your dispatcher servlet will be sending that response in an HTML to the user. And that is how this whole Spring MVC framework is coming into picture. So here model will be that particular Java object which will be holding your data. Here suppose while registering for the first time, you have sent your first name, last name, phone number, email ID, etc. So it will be first, suppose it will be saving some data in the DB and holding all the data along with an ID from the DB. It will be creating that Java object and then it will be sending it to dispatcher servlet or front controller. So that particular Java object will be your model in this case. Second thing, controller. What is controller is doing? Controller is managing the whole flow after front controller till it's coming back to or after till the time that it is getting all the data processed from either DB or some business logic or from some external API. Okay, so that was your controller, and then view is that UI which you are using to render the model or data that you are getting from your controller, and then to show it to the user you are using that particular view. So that's how model view controller architecture using Spring is working as Spring MVC. Now let us understand how this whole flow works in an actual application through code. So previously, whenever you are creating a basic Spring MVC application, you have few mandatory and basic things. First, web.xml. Second, Spring dispatcher servlet.xml. Okay. Third, one controller file. Fourth, you can have any name, one JSP or HTML file. Okay. Now, whatever name we said in this scenario, handler mapper, front controller, controller, dispatcher, front controller or dispatcher servlet, view resolver, we will understand through code where which part of this whole framework is coming into picture. First, you requested for a web page, so it should come to front controller or dispatcher servlet. Where is it? This web.xml is providing that dispatcher servlet. So whenever any request comes to your application, as we have given this URL pattern as slash, means any request to your application will be coming to this web.xml first. Means it will be coming to your dispatcher servlet, which will route your request to your handler mapper. But how does it get the handler mapper? Because we cannot find any handler mapper here. See, first it will be coming to this slash, then on getting slash it is saying Spring dispatcher servlet name. It is getting that, yes, this for this servlet mapping, if you see, this is a servlet mapping. For this servlet mapping, we have this Spring dispatcher. This two names should be similar if you want to map any particular URL pattern to a particular servlet. Okay. So now this dispatcher servlet, what it will do? First it will use this Spring dispatcher name. Then along with that it will append -servlet.xml. This is I am talking about the very basic Spring MVC, how it works previously. Right now there are so many layers on top of this, and then we got Spring Boot and so many other frameworks which makes our developers life easy. But this is what the basic thing that you should know before jumping into any kind of overlaid framework like Spring Boot or anything else. You need to know or understand the basics so that you can understand whenever you are getting an issue that why this is actually coming. Okay, so now it will be forming that name. Spring dispatcher it got from this servlet name, and then along with that -servlet.xml, and it will be creating that name, and then it will be able to get this file, as you need to have this servlet, so Spring dispatcher servlet.xml file in your class path. Let us see how it is here. See, I have given inside web content, web inf, I have this Spring dispatcher servlet.xml and web.xml. Okay, so these are in the same path. Now in Spring dispatcher servlet.xml, first see, after routing it here, see we have this handler mapping we have talked about, right? First, front controller or dispatcher servlet got the request because any request will be coming towards it. Then as the servlet mapping comes into picture, and by appending this name to -servlet.xml, it actually got one file, so it will be coming here. Then that request will be forwarded to handler mapper. Here we are using this bean name URL handler mapping, which has been provided by Spring framework itself. So here one thing to mention, if you are not mentioning any handler mapper also, it should work fine, because Spring MVC framework also, like by default it will be using one handler mapper. But for better understanding, I have using an external one, which has been provided by Spring MVC framework only. Okay, Spring framework only. Okay, now after getting it, what it will do? First it will check that URL. See, after checking the URL, suppose the URL is HTTPS like localhost:8080, then whatever my project name is, then slash Spring MVC slash welcome.html. So on getting that slash welcome.html, first it will be going to this hello controller, because see the mapping is like that, bean name welcome.html, it should be forwarded to this hello controller. Okay, let us now go to hello controller first and check how that has been designed. Hello controller, so it will be coming here. Okay, now things to understand here first. First of all, we have extended abstract controller. Why? Nowadays, if we are writing @controller here, this hello controller should work fine as a controller only. But actually, if you go inside that @controller annotation, you will understand that it is actually about extending one abstract controller. So previously, when this @controller annotation was not there, you have to extend any of the abstract controller, or some other controller is also there. Here I am using abstract controller, extending which this hello controller will be acting as a controller file. But nowadays you just have to use that @controller annotation, and that's all. You don't have to extend any of the controller file. Okay, so one more thing, this abstract controller is provided by Spring MVC framework itself. See, I have hovered on it and is saying that it has been provided by org Spring framework web servlet MVC abstract controller. And this is the like basic one, how you can create the actual controller file. Okay, now coming into it, we will be having one handle request internal. Why I have named it as this? Because as this is a controller file and this will be having this handle request internal class, which you need to provide an implementation. Just try to go inside it. See, this is abstract class which is having, see, which is having handle request method. Okay, so that's what we are just overriding it here. Okay, and while overriding it, if you see the return, like the type of data that this method we should be returning is model and view. What is this model and view? Model and view, if you open it, whenever you are in doubt, just open the file in jar. Okay, see, model and view, this class has also been provided by Spring framework only. As the name suggests, using this model and view class, you can send two things. One, the name of the view, which you need to send it to dispatcher servlet, so that, as I have already told you, that with that name it will be sending that name to view resolver. Then the view resolver will be creating the whole path of the UI by appending the suffix and prefix to it, and then rest rendering into HTML will be coming into picture. So if you see this model and view class, we have this object view, the type is object. So you can put the name of that particular view string as well, and then the model. Okay, so what we are doing here, we are doing two things. First, we are setting that using one of the constructor, we are setting the name of our UI, which is we have as hello page.jsp. So we are also setting here hello page. Then on setting it, we are adding the object to here. Suppose this is only our data, the model. Okay, so here we are not working with very big Java object or something. We are just trying to send a particular message inside this welcome message. So against this welcome, if you hover on this add object method, against a particular attribute name, you have to send an attribute value. So against this welcome message, you are sending welcome file to Spring World, right? So if you go to this welcome message, where it would be and how it will be coming into picture. So this sends the data right now. Okay, we have formed this model and view object and we have sent the data. Okay, so it will be again going to your dispatcher servlet only. But now dispatcher servlet has read your whole XML file already, right? So it has read this view resolver part as well, which is now will be coming into picture. see here we have internal resource view resolver as our view resolver, and this has been provided by Spring framework. Okay, so now again as part of this part, so we got the data, so we got this one. Okay, we got the data. Now front controller again will be sending that particular view name to view resolver, because see we got two things in our model view object, one the model, second the view name. So dispatcher servlet or your front controller will be sending that view to your internal resource view resolver file. Okay, so this view resolver, what it does, see we have a prefix, we have a suffix. Now what is the prefix? Prefix is web.inf. What is the suffix? .jsp. So how it create the whole path? See, we have this hello page.jsp, right? Where is it? Web.inf, then hello page.jsp. So inside your class path only, slash web.inf slash hello page, that we are sending it to through our model and view hello page. So slash web.inf slash hello page.jsp. The whole path we got it through our dispatcher servlet. So slash web.inf slash hello page dot JSP. So we got the exact address of your UI or view where your data will be rendered, and you will be sending that response rendered into an HTML or JSP file and send it to your user. Okay, so now coming into our, we got the your dispatcher servlet got the exact address, right? Now it will be sending that particular data which dispatcher servlet got it from model hello controller to your view, because it knows the address. Now if you remember, we have set one data inside welcome message attribute, right? So that we will be fetching here using this dollar sign, like dollar bracket. This is how the placeholder works in inside JSP, which you are setting through your control or Java file. Okay, so see we have set it here, welcome message against welcome message, we have set this welcome file to Spring World, and now that particular welcome file to Spring World phrase will be pasting or will be appending here against this welcome message. Let us run it and see how this works. So we'll be going to this project, run on server. We have selected Tomcat. I have many other projects, so I have selected the Spring MVC. Okay, now I'll be finishing it. Now let us see. See, it is starting up. Starting servlet. It got startup, right? Now it is saying you that HTTP status 404. Why? Because it is simply pointing it to your project. No file, no HTML, nothing. So now you have to provide that particular URL which you want to hit. In our case, it is HTML welcome.html, which will be triggering towards hello controller. Then the rest of the flow will be coming into picture. Let us see how it works. See, it gave me exactly what we have given in our hello page.jspc. Good morning we have given, and welcome message which we are setting inside hello controller.java. This one. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now you can try to change it to any other URL. Suppose I have given welcome1.html. See, again it is giving you 404 because there is no URL or no URL mapping towards welcome1.html. So that is why it is giving you 404 resource not available error. Okay. That's all for today. In the next part of this video, I'll be discussing with you guys how you can create a similar web application using Java configuration in Spring MVC framework. Also, along with that, I'll be discussing how XML configuration is getting mapped into Java configuration and how that flow is working in Spring MVC. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. I will catching up with you guys in my next video. Till then, keep learning with pride.